And now, making his way to the studio, banned from Sunday school since age 9, it's Mike Smithgall.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm Mike Smithgall, the unelected mayor of Atheistville, and this is today's Mic Drop. Today's topic is one of those moments that can be misunderstood if you only read the headlines. Yes, Kim Davis, the former Kentucky county clerk who went to jail in 2015 for refusing to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples, is asking the Supreme Court to overturn marriage equality. No, most experts do not think she's going to succeed, but that doesn't mean the story is irrelevant or harmless. Because what we're seeing here isn't just about one woman's lawsuit. It's about a larger, ongoing effort to chip away at secular rights in the name of religion. It's about persistence, even in the face of a decade of peaceful coexistence that disproved the religious right's doomsday predictions. And it's about why vigilance matters even when the odds seem very low. 10 years ago, the Supreme Court ruled in Obergefell versus Hodges that marriage equality was the law of the land. For millions of same-sex couples, it was a moment of joy and relief. For Kim Davis, it was the moment she decided that her personal religious beliefs were more important than her sworn duties as an elected official. Davis refused to issue marriage licenses, citing God's definition of marriage. Now that landed her in jail for 6 days. She's a hero to some, a villain to others. She was later sued by David Ermold and David Moore, a same-sex couple that she had denied. A jury awarded them $100,000 in emotional damage, plus $260,000 in attorney fees. Lower courts have repeatedly dismissed Davis's defense, noting that she, quote, cannot raise the First Amendment as a defense because she is being held liable for state action, which the First Amendment does not protect, unquote. Well, now she's back, petitioning the Supreme Court to overturn Obergefell entirely. Her lawyer, Matthew Staver, calls the original decision egregiously wrong and legal fiction, insisting the mistake must be corrected. Now, most observers see this as a very long shot, and it probably is. A federal appeals court saw no merit, and as attorney William Powell for the plaintiff said, not a single judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals showed any interest, and we are confident the Supreme Court will likewise agree. But in the same way a persistent cough might signal a deeper condition, Davis's petition is a symptom of something that never really went away. Okay, so let's deal with the obvious first. Legal experts, including conservative ones, don't think this case is going to end marriage equality. Josh Blackman, a conservative constitutional scholar, predicts the court's conservative majority would likely let challenges percolate in lower courts before revisiting Obergefell. ABC News' legal analyst, Sarah Isker, went even further. She said, there is no world in which the court takes this case as a simple gay marriage case. And the political landscape matters here. Support for marriage equality, according to Gallup, stands at 70% overall, even if Republican support has dropped from 55% in 2021 to 41% today. Overturning such a widely supported right would be politically explosive, especially after the fallout from overturning Roe v. Wade. And there's also the Respect for Marriage Act that was passed in 2022, which requires all states to recognize legal same-sex and interracial marriages performed in any state. Even if Obergefell were struck down, existing marriages would remain valid. So no, I don't believe, and the experts don't believe, that Kim Davis's case is going to erase marriage equality in 2026. But that's not the same thing as saying it's harmless. But if you look past the courtroom odds, you see a coordinated effort. In 2025 alone, at least 9 states have introduced legislation or passed resolutions urging the court to reverse Obergefell. The Southern Baptist Convention openly voted to make overturning it a top priority. These aren't random disconnected events. They're part of a long-term campaign, one that counts on the rest of us being too distracted or complacent to notice. One of the most important things here to remember is how wrong the religious right was in 2015. Back then, the rhetoric was apocalyptic. We were told that marriage equality would destroy the institution of marriage, corrupt children, trigger moral collapse, and invite divine wrath. The sky was supposed to fall. Spoiler alert. It didn't. Same-sex couples married, built lives together, raised kids, paid taxes, joined PTA meetings, and bought groceries. They did exactly what their heterosexual neighbors did, minus the part where they tried to deny everyone else the right to marry. There was no flood of bizarre, non-traditional unions. The slippery slope never appeared. Churches were not forced to perform same-sex weddings against their will. Society kept turning. And yet, here we are with Kim Davis, a woman, by the way, who has been divorced 3 times, claiming that same-sex marriage is somehow a threat to the sanctity of marriage. The irony here is very hard to ignore. If marriage is truly sacred, it's worth asking why ending 3 of her own were acceptable, but allowing 2 men or 2 women to marry is where she draws the moral line. In other words, the fears used to justify discrimination were baseless. They were always baseless. But here's the irony. The absence of those predicted disasters didn't lead to acceptance from opponents. If anything, it hardened a sense of grievance. That's why Kim Davis's case matters, even as a legal longshot. It's not about evidence. It's about ideology. It's about a refusal to accept that LGBTQ Americans can live openly without it being some kind of cultural threat. And that mindset, the one that clings to God's definition of marriage as a justification for denying rights, doesn't go away just because it lost a case in court. Hey, by the way, if you want a deeper look at how religious freedom has been used to chip away at secular rights, I recommend American Crusade by Andrew Seidel. He does a fantastic job breaking down how cases like Kim Davis's fit into a much larger strategy, one that's been building for years. I'll put a link to it in the show notes below. Kim Davis's legal argument is wrapped in religious liberty language, that the First Amendment should protect her from liability because she was following her religious convictions. But, as the courts have pointed out, she wasn't acting as a private citizen. She was the state in that case, right? This is part of a larger strategy, using claims of religious freedom not as a shield for personal practice, but as a sword to carve exemptions into public law. It's the same logic behind the baker who won't make a cake for same-sex couples or the employer who won't cover birth control in a health plan. In isolation, each case might seem small or even trivial in some cases, but over time, they create a patchwork of exemptions and carve-outs that erode the principle of equal protection. And it's not limited to marriage. Justice Clarence Thomas has openly called for revisiting not just Obergefell, but also Griswold versus Connecticut, which is a contraception right law, and Lawrence versus Texas, which is about striking down sodomy laws. That's a direct invitation to reopen fights we thought were already settled. When religious belief becomes a trump card, pun intended, over secular law, it's never just about one issue. It's about creating a precedent that any deeply held belief can override the rights of others. This isn't theoretical. It's happening right now in multiple states, with bills targeting LGBTQ rights, reproductive health, and even classroom curriculum. The through line is always the same: God's law over civil law, enforced through machinery of government. If we don't recognize the pattern, we risk waking up one day wondering how so much ground was lost without a single decisive battle. And I get it. It's tempting to dismiss the Davis case as political theater, a stunt that has no real chance of changing the law. And maybe that's exactly what it is. But the mistake would be assuming that because this case is weak, the threat is gone. It is not. History doesn't work like that. Rights are rarely lost in one dramatic moment. They're chipped away piece by piece until what's left is unrecognizable. Marriage equality survived this long not just because of a court decision, but because people fought to protect it. They pushed back against bad laws, challenged discrimination, and refused to let false narratives go unchallenged. Vigilance doesn't mean panicking over every headline. It means paying attention, calling out attempts to undermine rights, even unsuccessful ones, and keeping the conversation alive so these efforts don't happen in the shadows. It also means remembering the human side of this. For almost 1 million married same-sex couples in America, nearly 1 in 5 of whom are raising children, this isn't abstract. Every high-profile attempt to challenge their marriage is a reminder that their rights are still seen as negotiable by some. As Josh Blackman noted, it's hard to say where things will go, and he's right. But it's not hard to see the playbook. Whether it's marriage, reproductive rights, or privacy, the tactic is the same. Wait for a more favorable court, keep testing the boundaries, and hope fatigue sets in among the defenders of equality. We can't give them that fatigue. All right, that's my 2 cents. Unblessed and unfiltered. Agree, disagree. That's what I got for you today. Let me know what you think in the comments. You know, we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of Obergefell. That's 10 years of neighbors, coworkers, family members being able to marry the person they love without hurting a single soul in the process. If that's controversial to you, maybe the problem isn't marriage. Maybe it's the way you define harm. And if you've been lulled into thinking that this fight is over, let Kim Davis's case be a reminder. There's always someone willing to relitigate your rights if they think the political winds are in their favor. All right, if you enjoy the show, hit like and subscribe and share it with someone else who might appreciate it. And hey, if you or someone you know would make a great guest, reach out. Let's connect. Until next time, take care, and remember, reason and compassion go a very long way.